se cheamă.
Încă o dată, și dacă facem o mică greșeală, ei ne-au spus că editează, ei editează, nu-ți faci probleme.
Da. Eu îți dau brutul cum e, da?
Da.
Camera mea este asta.
Eu mă uit la tine.
Camera ta este asta, da.
Eu mă uit la tine.
Tu oricum te uiți la mine, da. Suntem în rec. Deci 69 minutes with Mario Naufal, dar...
This is a special transmission from Bucharest for 69 minutes on X.
Ok. Deci nu mai zic numele lui.
Yeah, you can say it or not.
Băi, dar cum se pronunță? Naufal?
Nafal,
nu?
Da.
Așa, că i-auzeam pe unii ziceau...
Da.
Ok,
Nafal.
Ok. Suntem în rec, da? Hello, everybody. My name is Anamaria Păcuraru. I'm a journalist at Realitatea TV, and this is a special transmission, the 10th of March, 2025, from Bucharest, Romania, for 69 minutes on X with Mario Naufal. My guest today and my friend is Mihail Neamțu. Thank you very much for coming here, and
good
also
to be back.
To have good to be back, because I know we talked about many scenarios worldwide throughout the years, but this is without precedent. And I want you to start here because you're a man of the inside, because you're a supporter of Georgescu, as I am too, because I think that some really wrong deeds have been happening in these past months. And yesterday, I believe it was a coup d'etat. Do you believe that what happened yesterday with his interdiction of ever having a candidacy at the presidents of Romania was a coup d'etat?
Well, the short answer is yes. Once again, thank you for having me. And let me just say that I'm right now representing the main opposition party in Romania, called AUR. It's a conservative party supporting Donald Trump and, of course, supporting the policies of the Trump administration. So we are pro-Western. We are not at all pro-Russian, or we're not in favor of any authoritarian regimes.
And that's a very important distinction that should be made.
It's a very important statement that I wanted to make in the first place, because I spent 25 years of my life trying to understand which are the pillars of Western civilization, why we should defend the West against the rest, so to speak, why we should still cherish the traditional values of, say, Christianity, family, open markets, individual freedom, freedom of conscience, freedom of expression. And precisely before being myself a defender of Mr. Georgescu, and I am, of course, a defender of Mr. Georgescu right now, I'm a defender of the big ideas, democracy, the rule of law, and constitutional order. And right now, if we open the most important document for any democracy, which is our constitution, we find, I think, Article 16 written down there, a very important statement that there is equal opportunity for everybody to run for office, right? There is this principle of equality. And right now, Mr. Georgescu, to use the leftist jargon, is being discriminated against. He is basically banned for life to run for office.
Why do you say for life? Is there a fine print that says that it's for life?
Yeah, there is a clear suggestion that he will never be allowed to run again.
In which sense? So
the Central Electoral Bureau, which should typically just look at the documents from a formal point of view.
Correct.
They should just revise or review the signatures, the correct addresses which are put down there. I mean, it's just a formal procedure which we should have been through yesterday.
The bureaucracy of the candidacy.
And it's normal. You have something like almost 400,000 signatures that have been collected by Mr. Georgescu and his fans and his supporters. They were brought to this place called the Central Electoral Bureau. They had enough time to look at the papers, and that was just a formal procedure. Now, instead of being a formal procedure, they started to look into the, I would say, moral and political considerations of Mr. Georgescu. And let me be very frank and candid with our viewers here abroad. I mean, in any kind of electoral competition, you hear candidates saying outrageous things, sometimes wild things. Even Mr. Trump made statements which later on became less relevant for the policy he started to carry out in America. But it's obvious that everybody during a campaign, because somebody feels tired, because somebody's under pressure, can make outlandish, even weird statements. And Mr. Georgescu is probably someone who made statements which today look a bit odd. However, in Romania, and I will remind you and our viewers as well that I was a supporter of a former president called Traian Băsescu. 20 years ago, this very candidate called Traian Băsescu, who was a friend of America, a friend of Europe, a supporter, I would say, even of the globalist cause, he said that we should impale in Victoria Square all the political opponents of Mr. Traian Băsescu. So he called himself or regarded himself as Vlad the Impaler, able to basically persecute his
which is incredible
enemies.
in this day and age that we're talking about
And
this.
so he was allowed to run. We had other candidates, very sort of weird, eccentric, hard nationalists who said we should even like have a firing squad to kill people for corruption acts. So, people say crazy stuff, right? But they should still be allowed to run for office if they have the minimum amount of signatures behind them.
So I want to go deeper because for me, it was no surprise that he wasn't allowed to run anymore because I know how many trials they had, and I'm referring to the system, because the system for me is the Secret Service of Romania that is involved in the elections. They tell you how to think, who to vote for, and what to eat, when you should go to sleep, and everything. So this is the system in Romania. Do you believe that this system will ever choose a candidate that maybe is not the specific candidate for the system? Because look at the people who decided what happened yesterday. They were from the main political parties who are now ruling Romania, because it is a dictatorship. That's why I'm using the term ruling. So then should we think that the next candidate that will be validated by this electoral central bureau will be a candidate of the system?
It's a very good question, and I would just rephrase what you've just said about the so-called deep state, because you're trying to characterize here, how the deep state operates in Romania. Let me just first say for our viewers, in America, across the ocean, that in Romania we have indeed, we used to have a strong cooperation with the FBI between our secret services and the American secret services. There was a deep connection. And we've seen some strange things happening with political actors being prosecuted, just like Mr. Trump was prosecuted, and especially his friends. In 2016, I think, we had people starting to be harassed for their political views only because they were supporters of Trump. Similar things happened to Romania or in Romania, and I agree with the general view that you've just expressed. However, I would say, apart from the secret services, and they are not fully involved, sometimes you see just fractions of the secret services being behind a globalist candidate. Other fractions might be behind the more patriotic character. I would say that even the political class, even people representing Brussels, the European Commission, are deeply involved in this. I mean, we obviously have, I call it a political cartel. And Mr. Georgescu was up against the political cartel, just like Javier Milei.
Are you referring to Thierry Breton?
No, so when I say political cartel, I think of PSD and PNL, the socialists and the liberals in Romania formed a coalition.
Fraternity.
It's fraternity forever. They've been in power for 35 years, right? There's no change if, PNL is ruling Romania. There's no change to that act of governance from what the previous PSD party did. So in general, what I'm trying to suggest to our viewers is that we have a candidate called Georgescu running against the establishment, and the establishment is made of state institutions, including, of course, the secret services, then, political institutions like the parliament and the government. But the thing is, the judiciary, which was supposed to be independent, right? Because we have the famous checks and balances principle, the division of power, or of powers, indeed. That judiciary system, which should be neutral and very independent from the political interference, has been penetrated. And we've seen, like, members of the Constitutional Court, which accepted in the first place Mr. Georgescu and his attempt to run for office. He was allowed, right?
Because
in
I
December.
think they didn't see him. I think they ignored him totally.
They did not perceive the threat.
Exactly.
So initially, they allowed him. The judges allowed him. But then the judges started to be got contacted by various people, including the French ambassador here in Bucharest.
And he just came here. What's your thought on that?
Well, listen, I mean, the question is, why should the representative of Emmanuel Macron in Romania, the representative of the executive power of the president of France, why should he or she talk to the members of the Constitutional Court, which in principle, again, should be an independent body, right? Why don't we have a true separation of powers, right? Why do we have to have judges who are political appointees? So Romania really has a big problem with the corruption that has unfortunately undermined all our efforts. And that against all these institutions, right, which are backed by the European Commission. I'll come back to Thierry Breton, who just said that, you know, they can annul elections, and he was happy about it. Against this whole group of individuals and institutions, we have the people. Now, the people are very dissatisfied. The people are very angry. The people are not happy. The people are frustrated because they've lost so many opportunities. I'm 46 years old. I can't believe that I'm 46, and instead of living in a flourishing democracy, in a flourishing country, where, you know, you have all the possibilities to bring up, opportunities for your kids, to create businesses, to create startups, to create added value in the marketplace. Instead of having that experience of life, which is fulfilling and flourishing, and which is nourishing your soul and your body, instead of having, a good disposition towards the spiritual matters, including religion and other things, we are fighting for our basic rights. And one basic right, which is not granted to us by the government, but by God himself, one basic right is the right to run for office, the right to be elected, and the right to choose somebody to be your representative. And this very basic right was taken from an individual called Călin Georgescu.
And we will touch base on the violences that happened yesterday, but I want you to go back to the European Commission and to Thierry Breton.
Yes, I mean, we had some interesting statements made by a former member of the European Commission, and we have to explain this to our viewers. The European Commission is like the European government, right? Nobody elected Ursula von der Leyen, right?
Correct.
There's no citizen in Europe who ever went to the booth, to the voting booth, to cast a vote for Ursula. She was elected by other bureaucrats.
You know what happened? There were other candidates at the beginning, but then they were taken out, and she was the only one left.
Yeah, so we have to tell our viewers that there is no way we can compare Ursula von der Leyen to Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, or even J.D. Vance,
been chosen.
Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, both of them have 75 million voters behind them, right?
True.
Direct involvement and direct participation from the people into the electoral process, validating the candidacy of a president. It's very different from Ursula, who was never voted directly by anybody. So, by any member of the European Union, by any member of the European nations. So, I would say the European Union is already suffering from a crisis of legitimacy. And why the populist revolution brought about by Mr. Trump, revived by Mr. Trump, is important. Why do we think America plays a critical and a huge role? It's because we believe they brought back this very important notion, we the people, like Abraham Lincoln once put it, the government by the people, for the people. Now, the people right now in Romania are ignored. The people do not count. 5 million out of 10 million who went to vote in December, 5 million support Georgescu. In all the polls I've read, Georgescu is polling around 45%, including the most recent polls I gave you yesterday that come from Europe, right? Even the pollsters that are based in Brussels.
And we even have a polling house. I conduct a polling house, and we have constantly done those polls to present the reality, and he has always been on top ever since the coup d'etat first happened in December.
So it's just like a soccer competition, just to draw here a parallel. So imagine you have, La Liga or something like a big competition, football or soccer competition in Spain, and all of a sudden Real Madrid is basically denied the right to play, only because some guys do not like, an individual coach or maybe some players. It's impossible. It's just too odd to have a functioning democracy right now in Romania without Georgescu.
And now we're going to the fans of the soccer game. If someone is denied access How did the fans react? We
Of
saw
course.
what the supporters of Călin Georgescu faced yesterday. We saw the law and order stopping the supporters from acting up. However, there was violence, there was revolt, and it's understood because you feel like you're a country that is not growing if you're rejected entrance to support and to have a president of your choosing.
Exactly. But not to say that we endorse violence.
No, in no way.
In no way we can endorse violence. We are just suggesting that there are two possibilities here. Anger is there, and of course people are frustrated. But of course, the left, radical leftists, typically use methods
Instigating.
which were well drafted by someone like Saul Alinsky many decades ago. Exactly, methods which were used by the BLM and Antifa organizations in America, in Charlottesville, people would remember this, against Trump. So you infiltrate an angry mob with like very violent elements. You prove to the world that they are, violent and impossible to control. And then you make the point that, all the supporters of Georgescu are radical fascists. In reality, I would say the supporters of, from a psychological point of view, the supporters of Georgescu tend to be middle-aged people who have seen their kids going to the West, basically leaving the country for a better opportunity outside the country. And so they are emotionally deprived of some, basic joys and experiences of fatherhood or things like that. And then also people who are frustrated from an economic point of view because their pensions are plummeting. Basically, our currency is devaluating every month. We see inflation going up. Romania is running into a huge pile of debt, so to speak. The government has to borrow money every single day in order to pay for pensions and for the salaries, for the hefty salaries of the bureaucracy. And in fact, I would say we have not just a coup d'etat, but we have a complete and utter domination of the bureaucracy in opposition to the democracy.
I would go even deeper. I would say it's a crime against democracy.
Yes, because the sovereignty belongs to the people. So if the people should be sovereign, right, then why don't you let the people decide for themselves, cast their vote for whomever they want to vote? And some people would say, but this is what happened to Germany and Hitler. These are very stupid analogies. We are part of NATO, we are part of the EU, and we have all the instruments to impeach any president who would trespass basically the tenets of our constitution. Correct. So I'm not afraid of Georgescu that, he could become a wild authoritarian figure. Because why? We are a parliamentary democracy, and I belong to a political party that supports Georgescu, but which at the same time is working for the people inside the parliament so that no constitutional article would be ever trespassed.
So you're the internal local allies of Călin Georgescu and of Romania in this sense. I want to ask you what should be expected of our other allies, such as the United States of America, in this time?
Well, of course, we would like to see Mr. Marco Rubio. I'm sorry, Mario is with us already, but we need also Marco. Marco Rubio is someone who understands very deeply how communism shaped various societies. And I think he has a Cuban background, and he spent a lot of time working with families which were refugees from Cuba, from communist Cuba. And he would very easily understand, I think, if he would be presented a very neutral perspective, that Romanians still suffer from this communist trauma, right? Communism was a system in which the people had no voice. And freedom of expression is something fundamental. So Mr. Rubio could very easily express some worries, just like J.D. Vance did in Munich, at the Munich conference, security conference, some weeks ago. He could express some concerns regarding two things. One, freedom of expression. And here I might bring up a subject called the Digital Service Act, which was implemented by the European Commission and which in our case is being implemented by ANCOM. And there's a special person there, Pavel Popescu, in charge with this censorship, basically. And we see lots of TikTok accounts, and not just TikTok accounts, being canceled only because they support Georgescu. So we have censorship, online censorship, and Marco Rubio would be someone, just like J.D. Vance, to express concerns over the developments taking place in Romania, against freedom of speech, against freedom of conscience, and then you have the electoral process, which is deeply, deeply corrupted right now by the state institutions, including BEC, that is the bureau, the electoral bureau, and then by the constitutional court. So because we see our electoral system being corrupted from inside, America, which is our strategic ally, could express concerns and could even invalidate or not recognize the future presidential elections. Why would they recognize the elections or the election of a new president in Romania if the main candidate has been kicked out? That's impossible. So you can't really say there is any legitimacy to the future president of Romania if the main competitor of that future president was taken out from the ballot box forcefully.
Well, wow, so many things and events have happened in the past weeks, I can say. And yesterday, I want to remind our viewers, there were 4 candidacies that were deposed for this bureaucratic search, as you say, because it's basically procedure, and only one was admitted. One who is the actual mayor of Bucharest. He was the only one who was admitted to...
For the time being.
Exactly, for the time being.
So we see here an interesting parallel between Romania and Poland. In Poland, the main candidate of the globalists is a mayor of Warsaw, who happens to take now very liberal views on anything from the woke ideology to marriage and LGBTQ rights and stuff like that, being quite anti-Catholic. And the same happens right now to Mr. Nicușor Dan, who is basically the darling of the liberal left in Europe. While now the funny thing is that Mr. Nicușor Dan, and very few people know this, but I've done my homework, I've researched him, 25 years ago expressed very strong sentiments in favor of a nationalist movement called the Iron Guard. He was actually a defender of the main voices supporting, I would say, the rebirth of the interwar right-wing movements. And he changed for the past 25 years. We saw a transformation of this mayor. He became a very liberal figure. And now, as I said, he might run for office with the support, not just of the European Commission, but also with the support of some, I would say, traditional, like I would say, no, not traditional, but I would say with the support of the establishment parties. Now, it's true that we are right now in Bucharest discussing about, possibilities to still be present in the competition, to be still running with a good candidate if Mr. Georgescu will be denied the right to run for office. And who knows, maybe in 24 hours after this conversation was recorded, maybe again the Constitutional Court will take a decision against Mr. Georgescu. I want to just say to all our viewers that we are ready for everything. We are ready for every scenario, and we are ready to have all the options on the table. Let me just thank also publicly Elon Musk. Let me thank Mario Naval. Let me thank Senator Mike Lee. Let me thank Matteo Salvini, who is a leader, political leader in Italy.
The Italian press, actually, right now, a journalist from Italy has messaged me to get a point of view.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important and of great importance.
Exactly. Let me thank Robert Malone, who is a good friend of Mr. Robert Kennedy. Let me thank Zero Hodge. Let me thank all our supporters in the West. Again, we do not support here an authoritarian regime. We do not want to have Romania embarking on a trajectory which will bring us closer to Russia or to any authoritarian political structure. No, we want just the basic tenets of democracy to be preserved and to be basically celebrated by future generations. You are a mother, and I want to congratulate you for this. And you've done this interview with me while being pregnant, and thank you for that. And I'm sorry that if maybe this is a private information, I just want to celebrate the fact that some people, and like myself and like you, still have trust in the future. We have kids. We want to build families. We want to have our kids flourishing in this country. We don't want them to end up who knows where. We don't want them to leave the country. We don't want them to flee our country, because our country has been blessed with so many beauties, natural beauties, landscape, culture. I mean, Romania, and let me just say this, if you allow me, Romania is such a wonderful country. People come here and tell me, oh, I wasn't aware that you have so many spiritual riches, right? People go to Voronezh. They go to the monasteries built 500 years ago when America did not even exist, by Stephen the Great, by great voivodes, by great patriarchs, by great spiritual leaders. And you have this beauty, architecture, paintings, icons, music, liturgy. The Holy Easter is going to come in a few weeks, and people will celebrate Easter in a long vigil during the night, and you will see all these candles bringing light. So there's so much beauty in terms of aesthetics, right? You go to a village, a traditional village in Maramureș, and you still see people dressed properly in their national costumes.
And this should be celebrated.
And that beauty is so unique. I've seen even Christian Dior, the famous fashion house in Paris, taking some models from our poor peasants, and they are again celebrated. So what I'm trying to suggest that Romania should be proud of its heritage. Romania is a country where great geniuses have been born. Eminescu, the great poet, but also someone like Mircea Eliade, the greatest historian of religion, who spent his time, his adult years in Chicago, but also Paris. I'm thinking of great geniuses who got a Nobel Prize in literature or in chemistry, like Mr. Palade. Why can't Romania be the most exceptional country in Europe? Why can't Romania be the place where people choose to live rather than choose to live behind? So to live in rather than to live behind. So I'm here making a case that Romania could become a very prosperous nation, but on one condition, that we grant the people this very basic right to exercise their freedom of conscience.
I want to circle back to why Călin Georgescu was banned yesterday from running for office. Basically, just to put it out there, as I understood it, it's because of what happened in December, because the elections were overthrown because of his candidacy. Basically, this was their reaction. This was their result.
Circular argument, isn't it? It's a circular argument. We can't allow you to run.
How can you justify that?
Because you have not been allowed to run in December.
Something very interesting, if you saw, his wife is Cristela Georgescu. She has the same initials as Călin Georgescu. The people who went to depose of this candidacy, who were against Călin Georgescu, because basically that's how it works. The people, whoever wants to go to the electoral bureau of Central Electoral Bureau, they go and they depose against a candidacy of whoever it may be, whoever posed their candidacy in this bureau, and they specifically mentioned C. Georgescu in case, because now many people think that Cristela Georgescu might run for office, his wife. So now they wanted to be very precautious in this matter, so they just put C. Georgescu.
C. Georgescu.
C. Georgescu.
Yes, it's hard to speculate, but I get the point. Once again, let me just emphasize for our audience, for our Western audience, we're talking here not about a kind of iron guard type who is a fascist trying to have a militia made of Nazi sympathizers. No, we are talking about an expert in the field of agriculture who got his PhD in this very field, who was for decades supported by members of the Romanian intelligentsia. I'm thinking here of the Romanian Academy, thinking of people like Mircea Malița, who was a great diplomat in the 70s, who, by the way, opposed USSR in the 60s during the Cuban Missiles Crisis. So he was against the decision of Khrushchev to put some nuclear missiles in Cuba against America. So he was the disciple of Mircea Malița, a great diplomat, as I said, in Romania. He was also, if not friends, at least an acquaintance of the current Minister of Foreign Affairs, Emil Hurezeanu. He was debating Hurezeanu. He was debating Mircea Joană. He was debating other members of the Romanian Academy or of the Romanian National Bank. So what I'm suggesting here is that Georgescu didn't come out of nowhere. He was just, I would say, the voice of reformists in this country, and he was accepted as long as he did not pose any political threat. The moment he started to speculate and to think
to
not
speak his mind, basically, to say the truth.
Exactly, but not also, he started not just to talk about the past. He started to talk about the future, right? He started to create a scenario for Romania, for the future of our, kids and grandchildren. The moment he started to think politically, he became the enemy number one in this country. I'm not trying to say that he did not make some maybe blunders or, again, mistakes. He made, for instance, just to tell our viewers, to be very candid. So he said he doesn't quite know whether the moon landing took place. Again, I heard Joe Rogan say similar stuff, right? Being very skeptical whether the Apollo mission was a successful one or not. Mr. Georgescu also maybe made a mistake by allowing some bodyguards with a dodgy past, people who say, one of his bodyguards spent some time in Africa, right? And of course, all bodyguards have their past. All bodyguards, including the bodyguard of Emmanuel Macron, have like issues with their biography. Now, that has nothing to do, I would say, with the conservative movement in Romania. The fact that his bodyguard met some Russians in either Moscow or in Congo, it has no bearing to our basic and fundamental trust in democracy and trust in liberty and trust in, I would say, the future of this country. And what they are trying to do right now, the establishment, the mainstream media, the Soros types, right? And we can talk also a bit about this, how the USA and Soros created a network in Romania, a network of influencers, a network of journalists who right now basically coalesced with the governmental parties.
And because you were talking about censorship, I wanted to add, and sorry for interrupting you,
again,
because most of mass media in Romania is censored because it's in a direction depending on who it's owned by, depending on what the agenda is, depending on what benefits it has. And we stand as the only one who in this period weren't afraid to go against this agenda of the globalists, of the oligarchs. And we will touch base on that.
Congratulate you for this. Again, we are broadcasting from Bucharest, live from Bucharest. We are in a studio which is owned by Realitatea TV Plus, and we are grateful and thankful for your work, and I'm very happy that we can do this together. What I was suggesting is that though Mr. Georgescu may have made, like any human being, some minor mistakes in terms of public statements or associations, again, the fundamental tenets of his political philosophy, and again, the basic ideals and dreams of our people are oriented towards, I would say, the conservative movement which both Mr. J.D. Vance and Mr. Donald Trump embrace. And I think it's called, our creed, it's called normalcy, or how can I put it? It's just, I would say, common sense, right? We call it the revolution of the common sense. We want to see Romania being a country of opportunities. For 35 years, our political class squandered these opportunities. And I'll give a few examples, if you allow me. So, in Romania, if you go shopping, right, or you go into a restaurant, and there are beautiful restaurants here in Bucharest, you'll be shocked. If you go to Texas, right, you'll find burgers and you'll find good meat and, fine cuisine made in America, made in the USA, or made in the USA.
And it's something of pride there.
Of course, the bourbon, if we talk about, distillery, and then, of course, the meat, and then the red Angus, and so on and so forth. So, you celebrate the local farmer. You celebrate the local cuisine. In Romania, unfortunately, 85% of what we eat on a daily basis is basically made outside of Romania. Though Romania is a very rich agricultural country, right? We had this wonderful tradition for hundreds of years. And then Mr. Georgescu comes in and he says, we should stop this.
That's what I wanted to touch base on, because Trump is something that is not allowing external factors to interfere with his own state, with his people, which is what a president should do. This is what Mr. Georgescu is trying to do, to be the leader of democracy, of choice, and of Romania first. And all of a sudden we're like, no, we have to see what Brussels says. We have to see what the European Commission says. We have to see what other leaders say, because we might get more money in our pockets. And everything goes back to the oligarchs. Everything goes back to the globalists that we keep talking about.
And I'll explain this to our viewers across the ocean. So you have in Romania, again, rich agricultural land, which is not properly used in order to produce food, right? So what we do, we just export grain, and then we import basically we import wheat, and then we import also, I would say, bakery stuff, bakery products. We import bread. Can you imagine? We import bread, but we are a country...
But we export the grains, yeah.
Where a lot of grain is being grown. So, let me say something else here. We have a lot of oil and gas. So we had oil, and we still have oil in the Black Sea and in other parts of Romania. What did we do with our natural resources? What do you think? We've given all these resources to the Austrians. People in Austria are benefiting from the riches of Romania. There are other such natural resources which have been basically exploited by French companies, by Austrian companies, by German companies. And of course, Mr. Georgescu, who is a nationalist, is putting off the big capital, so to speak, is putting off some of these oligarchs that you've talked about. And I'm not saying we should not have good economic cooperation with other countries. Of course, we welcome American investors here. We welcome everybody for a fair deal, for a fair trade. But we can't see our people being impoverished by the globalists who are taking basically all the profit out of the country and leaving our average citizen with the minimum wage. That's what we are witnessing. What else? Mr. Georgescu said he's fed up with the LGBTQ propaganda in schools. Of course, this put off the Soros types, the Soros network. He also said he wants to see a vibrant Christianity flourishing in this country rather than lack of morality and lack of decency being cultivated and being promoted on the streets and also in our schools. What did he say? He also said that he wants Romania to be part of NATO, but also a country where peace is being promoted rather than war.
And one more thing, I think it's very important because we always spoke about this even on the show. However, it was kind of a slippery slope, being censored by, you know, all of those media judges that fine us every single time. This agenda of wokeness. Why do you think many mainstream parties in Romania have this agenda? My opinion is that there's a lot of money involved in the European Union, in Brussels. There's a lot of money involved in those organizations of LGBTQ, of different substantial alterations and not tradition. There's so much money involved by different recipes given by external factors that this is why they're vouching for this, and this is why they're going towards this, not because they believe in this, not because they're for human rights or for inclusion.
Rights.
No way. It's just for the money.
Exactly, and that's why what Elon Musk is doing with the famous Doge, what Mr. Trump did by telling everybody, telling the world that they've spent $30 million.
With the Taiwan conductors also
but no,
being...
supporting Maya Sandu and other globalist forces in Moldova. This is very important because people only now come to realize that basically nobody, all these talking heads, right, which we can see all around Romania, all these talking heads basically have their pockets filled with money by the US aid or by Soros directly. And this is not paranoia. This is not something we are making up. We can document, maybe in the next transmission, we can document how many journalists, how many media outlets have received directly money from USAID. I remember here the name of J4 Media, then I think Press One and other media outlets received direct funding from, again, Joe Biden and his team. Now, Mr. Trump says he wants an even playing field. He wants to see a real democratic debate, and he doesn't want to endorse, ideologically speaking, the leftist candidates only because they claim to defend the so-called minority rights. And by the way, nobody is being persecuted in Romania for being gay. Nobody is persecuting in Romania for having a homosexual lifestyle. We only want the definition of marriage to stay the same. We only want Romania to be reborn, so to speak, from a spiritual, economic, but also demographic perspective. We see a steep demographic decline. We see basically a lot of missed opportunities here. Many families stopped having children, unfortunately, and we want to see this trend being stopped and even reversed. How can we do that? Well, by having a proper example. And Mr. Georgescu, I'll say this, he has 3 children. He is a family person. Maybe he had his past. We all have a past. behind us, but there is also the present and the future. And Mr. Georgescu is a family person, a traditionalist in that respect. Someone who, for instance, I'll give you this example, is taking the fasting experience seriously. He is fasting from time to time. He's also exercising. He was a sports person. He was involved in, I think, judo competitions or
we're talking about a balanced life with
a balanced
no
lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you see, like here, the party USR, for example, it's a progressist party, and it's the party of globalists, and it's a party of young people who have studied abroad. And we shouldn't generalize this, because you have studied abroad. You have been in England. I have studied in the United States. And I came back, as you have, in our country, in Romania. And we're bringing this traditional view. I was in an Episcopal school in Los Angeles. And you might think, Los Angeles, it's Hollywood, it's glam, it's LGBTQ, it's drugs on the street. But no, I had this Episcopal value, this view of tradition, this view of Christianity, which I brought back to my country. And I think many people should go forth in this sense. But we're talking about this party which has been schooled in different universities where you may say that are Soros founded, and I believe the same thing. And they have altered views, which they're trying to alter in the country.
Exactly, and one particular view which is putting them off is Mr. Georgescu's desire not to allow people from Africa and from Asia to come here in a kind of illegal manner. And just like Mr. Trump is saying he wants to bring an end to illegal migration, Mr. Georgescu said that our borders should be properly guarded and should be secured against any kind of invasion, so to speak. Europe in general has this huge issue, right? We see the cities of Europe being fundamentally transformed. We see people almost radical jihadists sometimes in Sweden or even in Austria, which is very close to us. We see them protesting against traditional Christian values. We see them, accepting new norms, including, may I say, a degrading view of what a woman is, right? Because I mean, we see Islamist preachers coming from the Gulf sometimes, from the northern part of Africa, from various countries like Morocco or Algeria, if not Nigeria. And they come to Europe and they preach values which are basically the opposite of what we believe in. We believe that a woman should be or can be both a mom, a wife, and a professional, just like you. You are a professional, you are a journalist, but you are both, a wife and a mother, and that's very good and that's very healthy for a society.
This comes from education, and it comes from the education of your family. But your family, if it grows in a toxic society, the values will be altered. This is why even now, my son, who is 2 years old, we're looking at a high school. I was about to say, yeah, we're already thinking about university. No, we're looking at a kindergarten that has those traditional values. I'm very precautious in this because I know everything starts from this young age.
Exactly.
And I was lucky and fortunate enough to have parents who raised me this way. But what do we do further on with the new generation that is coming, the new generation who is voting left, well, not left, but the leftist agenda,
and which is indoctrinated by woke ideology.
Exactly. What will happen in Romania?
This is why my party, wants basically to ban all woke ideology from schools. We don't want to see kindergarten institutions. We don't want to see programs in schools, both public and private schools, where homosexuality or crazy transgenderism ideologies are being promoted. Why? Because we don't believe kids have the autonomy and the maturity to think for themselves and to take proper decisions. We should wait, and if at the age of 21 or at the age of 20 they want to embrace a certain lifestyle, that's fine. They can do it on their own. But it is just too odd that we have parents striving every single day to make ends meet, to basically provide food and shelter for their families and for their kids. And then when their kids go from their homes to these schools, they are being directly alienated from their own parents and grandparents too. So we see a war. I would say Antonio Gramsci, the famous Marxist Italian philosopher, is not foreign at all to this long march through the institutions, which was, I think, the main objective of Soros, of Saul Alinsky, and of, I would say, the leftists in America. They realized a true communist revolution should take place not in the form of, say, the proletariat taking it to the streets of the European capitals. No, instead of using the proletariat or the working class, they started to use the intellectuals. And what did they do? They entered the most important educational institutions. They penetrated, that is, the most important educational institutions with ideologues rather than educators, and they started to spread this false philosophy, which basically is encouraging kids and teenagers and students not to pursue goodness, truth, and beauty, but to pursue power, right? Not to pursue the most important values of human life, the universals, as the medievals once put it. No, they are being trained to become activists. And to be an activist is not a real job, right? I mean, there are more important things in life than just pursuing a social cause. For instance, it's very important to be a decent human being. It's very important to be well educated. It's very important to be a loving mother. It's a very important thing to be a loving father. All these things have disappeared from the public discourse. Under the pressure, coming from Brussels, coming from Soros, coming from the Frankfurt School, and coming from these ideologues who, again, as I said, in a very strategic fashion, not by accident, but very strategically, decided to go and have this long march through the institutions. They've penetrated state institutions like the media censorship institution you're talking about, because you get lots of fines from CNA, right? So you get fines from those who are, again, ideologically biased towards the left.
And they're named by the big parties, obviously.
We see not just the universities, not just the state institutions, we see political parties being penetrated by these individuals. So the end result is that the traditional Romania or traditional Poland or traditional Hungary or traditional Croatia that we used to love, all these countries in Eastern Europe are in jeopardy, and they look more and more like the failed democracies of the West.
We're nearing the end. We have 5 more minutes left. I wanted to ask you, how will the elections look like without Călin Georgescu? Will we have a surprise?
I will express a view which might sound shocking to you. I'm not 100% sure we should even accept these elections. I think a boycott could be a possibility. If we have the backing of the American ally, of the Trump administration, if there is a very strong condemnation coming from Marco Rubio or from Mr. Trump himself against this decision taken by the Constitutional Court in Romania, we could even think of a general boycott against any election which does not include Mr. Georgescu. There is, of course, a possibility to have other solutions, but there's no solution without Mr. Georgescu being involved. That's something we know for sure. Without Mr. Georgescu saying what he likes and what he wants to do in the coming weeks and months, it's impossible to have such a conversation. So out of respect for him, out of respect for his family, including his wife, I would not comment on this. I would just say this: we need a strong support and strong statement coming from our most important strategic military and economic and political ally, and that's the United States of America. Once we get that, I think everything will change.
Well, thank you so much for this special transmission. It was Anamaria, Păcuraru, and Mihail Neamțu from Bucharest, Romania, the 10th of March, 2025, right after the denial of the candidacy of Mr. Călin Georgescu for 69 minutes on X with Mario Nafal. Thank you.